They say corporate America is a meritocracy, a place where hard work, innovation, and dedication are rewarded. They also say unicorns can grant wishes and that kale tastes good. I'm here to tell you the real story, the one whispered in cubicle corners and screamed in empty server rooms after everyone else has gone home. This is the story of Ryan, a data engineer whose quiet brilliance was almost extinguished by the suffocating ambition of a man who mistook his own laziness for strategic acumen. Our protagonist, Ryan, wasn't the type to dominate meetings with booming pronouncements or to strategically network over overpriced lattes. No, Ryan was a craftsman. His domain was the intricate, often unglamorous, but utterly vital world of data engineering. He was the architect of the unseen, the builder of the bridges that carried information from chaos to clarity. His colleagues might have described him as reserved, perhaps even a little shy. His boss, Victor, a man whose management style was best described as enthusiastic delegation of everything, saw him as, well, he probably didn't see him at all until he needed something. Victor, our antagonist, was a walking, talking embodiment of the phrase, all hat, no cattle. He was the kind of manager who could spin a simple data request into a strategic imperative, who could claim ownership of a problem he never bothered to understand, and who could effortlessly sprinkle the word synergy into any conversation like it was a rare spice. His natural habitat was the executive lounge, his natural activity was complaining about the coffee, and his natural talent? For making sure the credit for any success landed squarely in his own lap, while any failure was carefully deflected onto someone like Ryan. Ryan's mission, the one that would become the pivot point of this entire saga, was to tackle the company's data collection process. It was a mess. A Byzantine labyrinth of disparate systems, redundant entries, and gaping holes where crucial information should have been. It was the kind of problem that made grown data analysts weep and business intelligence dashboards look like abstract art. Most people would have just slogged through it, creating kludges and workarounds, patching the leaks with digital duct tape. But not Ryan. Ryan saw potential. He envisioned a system, a singular, elegant database that wouldn't just collect data, but orchestrate it, purify it, and make it sane. He started sketching out ideas in his personal digital diary. Now, this wasn't some fleeting thought process captured in a few hurried notes. Ryan's diary was a meticulously organized digital archive of his professional life. Think of it as a data engineer's equivalent of a seasoned detective's case file. Every early draft, every email exchange with a potential vendor, every whiteboard session, even the ones he had by himself in his home office, talking out loud to his monitor, was painstakingly logged, time-stamped, and cross-referenced. He wasn't just documenting, he was building a forensic record of his own innovation. He spent months on this. Late nights, early mornings, weekends, while Victor was busy attending strategic visioning sessions that were, in reality, glorified brainstorming meetings for his next golf trip, Ryan was in the trenches. He was modeling tables, writing complex SQL queries, and debugging intricate algorithms. He built a small, physical prototype too, a tangible representation of his digital brainchild. He kept it at home, not out of any premonition of betrayal, but because it was the most practical place to test its early functionalities without needing IT approval for every minor tweak. It was a sleek, unassuming box, humming quietly on his desk, a physical manifestation of pure intellectual property. Finally, the day came. The database was not just functional, it was magnificent. It streamlined data collection so effectively that reporting times were slashed by 70%, accuracy soared, and previously invisible trends suddenly became blindingly obvious. Ryan, with his characteristic quiet pride, presented his finished work to Victor. He walked him through the architecture, demonstrated its capabilities, and explained the profound impact it would have on the company's bottom line. Victor, for once, was genuinely impressed. The sheer elegance of it, the obvious power, it was too much for his ego to resist. He saw not Ryan's genius, but an opportunity, a shortcut to glory. The company-wide announcement came a week later. It was a dazzling affair, held in the main auditorium, complete with a corporate video showcasing stock footage of people smiling and pointing at glowing charts. Victor, standing center stage, basked in the spotlight. He spoke of his vision, his team's relentless dedication, and his leadership in transforming the company's data infrastructure. He even managed to throw in a few nods to the invaluable contributions of certain team members, a vague platitude that conveniently omitted Ryan's name entirely. HR, a department that specialized in the art of polite dismissal, was right there beside him, beaming. They'd already prepared the exit package for the architect of this triumph. Ryan sat in the back, a silent observer in his own revolution. He watched as Victor took all the credit, basking in the applause of a company that had no idea they were cheering for a thief. Then, as the attendees milled about, networking and congratulating Victor, the HR director, a woman whose smile was as plastic as her name tag, approached Ryan. "Ryan," she began, her voice saccharine sweet, "we wanted to have a quick chat. We've been doing a lot of restructuring, and unfortunately, your role doesn't quite fit our new direction. We're going in a different way." Ryan, the man who had just built the very foundation of that new direction, listened patiently. He knew this moment was coming, not because he was bad at his job, but because he was too good, too honest, too inconvenient for men like Victor. "We're calling it a cultural fit issue," she continued, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape route from her own manufactured lie. "Your unique approach, it just doesn't align with our evolving team dynamics." Unique approach. That was their euphemism for not being a sycophant, for actually caring about the quality of the work. "We have a severance package prepared," she added, sliding a thin folder across the table. "It includes 3 months' salary, and of course, we'll need you to return all company property immediately. Your laptop, your badge, your keys." Ryan looked at the folder, then at the HR director, then back at Victor, who was still high-fiving some bewildered executive in the distance. He felt no anger, no panic, just a profound sense of clarity. They thought they had just cut loose a loose end. They had no idea they had just handed the reins of their entire downfall to the one person who knew exactly where all the strings were attached. He calmly gathered his personal belongings from his desk. A worn-out coffee mug, a small desk plant, a framed photo of his cat. He left behind the company laptop, the badge, the keys. He didn't say a word as he walked out of the building, not out of resignation, but out of strategic foresight. The automated door slid open. The harsh daylight felt alien after months spent in the fluorescent glow of the office. He walked to his car, not with the dejected slump of a fired employee, but with the measured stride of someone who had just completed the first phase of a much larger plan. As he drove away, the city skyline receding in his rearview mirror, Ryan didn't feel defeated. He felt organized. He wasn't sad. He wasn't angry. He was simply preparing. The executives were celebrating their perceived victory, basking in the false glow of stolen innovation. They thought they had silenced Ryan. They had no idea he was just getting started. He knew, with absolute certainty, that they had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. And he, Ryan, the quiet data engineer, had the receipts. The digital diary, the physical prototype, and a deep understanding of how everything worked. They had fired him, but they hadn't fired his work. And that work, as they were about to learn, had a life of its own. The clock was ticking. They thought they had won. Victor, basking in the reflected glory of Ryan's stolen innovation, was already mapping out his next career move, probably involving a corner office with a better view and a larger golf handicap. The HR director, satisfied with her swift execution of corporate policy, was likely already drafting the next cultural fit dismissal. But what they perceived as a clean sweep was, in reality, just the first subtle tightening of a noose. They had underestimated the quiet competence of the craftsman, the meticulousness of the archivist. Ryan didn't rage. He didn't file lawsuits out of spite. Not yet. His revenge wasn't about noise. It was about precision. His personal digital diary, that meticulously curated repository of his professional life, became his armory. He spent the next few days sifting through it with the calm intensity of a surgeon. Every draft of the database architecture, every email where Victor had vaguely alluded to the project, every internal memo that mentioned data optimization initiatives, Ryan had them all, time-stamped and perfectly indexed. He cross-referenced them with his personal code repository, ensuring that the version control logs undeniably pointed to him as the sole architect and primary developer. He even went back to the emails he sent to potential vendors for hardware and software, the ones that showed his independent research and early proposals. He found the thread where Victor had initially dismissed the project as too ambitious, only to later claim it as his own brainchild. He found the subtle shifts in Victor's tone, from dismissive to demanding, mirroring Ryan's own progress. It was a symphony of corporate treachery, and Ryan had the full score. Then there was the physical prototype. He carefully documented its existence with high-resolution photos and a detailed write-up of its functionalities, noting how it predated any official company development efforts on the final project. He even included a brief video demonstrating its core features, a silent testament to his solitary genius. He wasn't just proving he built it, He was proving he built it before it was theirs. His meticulously kept logs didn't just document his work, they documented the timeline of Victor's escalating interest and eventual appropriation. Each entry was a brick in the wall of evidence, a silent accusation against Victor's narrative of sole proprietorship. He was building his case not with anger, but with an almost eerie detachment, the kind born from absolute certainty. Meanwhile, the company began to feel the absence of its invisible architect. The first tremor was subtle. A critical reporting deadline for a major client, one that relied heavily on the new data system, was missed. The client, a notoriously demanding firm, sent a terse email demanding an explanation. Panic began to ripple through the analytics department. Victor, who had only a superficial understanding of the database's inner workings, found himself utterly adrift. He barked orders, delegated tasks erratically, and blamed the team for their supposed incompetence. The elegant system Ryan had built, designed for seamless operation, began to show its fragility in the hands of those who didn't understand its foundation. Then, the system itself started to glitch. Minor anomalies at first, corrupted data entries, unexpected performance dips. The IT department, always playing catch-up, was baffled. They couldn't pinpoint the source of the errors, as they weren't equipped with the deep-level understanding Ryan possessed. They were looking for loose wires and failing servers, not for the digital equivalent of a missing keystone. Ryan, meanwhile, was receiving cryptic messages from former colleagues, whispers of the escalating chaos, texts from Sarah in analytics, expressing confusion and frustration. An email chain from a former mentor, a cryptic message about Victor's increasingly erratic behavior. The panic was palpable, leaking through the corporate veneer like water through a cracked dam. They were lost without their architect. Victor, in a desperate attempt to regain control, called a mandatory all-hands meeting. He stood on stage, looking flustered, trying to reassure everyone that the system was robust and that they were implementing new protocols to ensure stability. He even vaguely mentioned a recent transition in personnel that had, apparently, caused minor adjustments. The words felt hollow, even to him. It was during this meeting, as Victor droned on about synergy and operational fluidity, that Ryan sprung his trap. He didn't storm the stage or send a dramatic manifesto. Instead, he executed a single, perfectly timed maneuver. He sent a polite, almost apologetic email to the company's head of compliance and the lead investor liaison. The subject line was innocuous: clarification regarding data infrastructure ownership. The email was concise. It stated that due to his recent, unexpected termination, he felt compelled to clarify his role in the development of the company's core data infrastructure. He attached a curated selection of his personal documentation, the early design blueprints, the version-controlled code repository logs, and a brief video demonstrating the physical prototype. He also included a polite but firm inquiry about the company's intellectual property policy regarding contributions made prior to formal project initiation and employment termination without cause. He didn't make accusations. He simply presented facts, meticulously organized and undeniable. He CC'd his personal lawyer, whose signature appeared at the bottom of the email as an addendum. The effect was instantaneous. The head of compliance, a stickler for rules and prone to extreme caution, immediately flagged the email. The investor liaison, whose job it was to protect the company's market value, recognized the potential for a catastrophic PR nightmare. A frantic internal investigation was triggered, far more rigorous than Victor's panicked attempts to fix the system. Victor and the HR director were summoned to a hastily convened emergency board meeting. They arrived with their usual bluster, ready to deflect and blame. But as the board members, faces grim, presented Ryan's meticulously organized digital evidence, their bluster evaporated. The clear timestamps, the detailed documentation, the irrefutable proof of Ryan's sole authorship, it all painted a damning picture. The cultural misfit had just become the company's most valuable asset, and they had, in their hubris, cast him out. The silence in the boardroom was heavy with the unspoken realization. They were in deep trouble, and Ryan held all the leverage. The silence in the boardroom didn't last long. It was shattered by the frantic ringing of phones and the hushed, panicked whispers of executives realizing their carefully constructed edifice of deceit was crumbling around them. The board members, a collection of seasoned financiers and corporate strategists who valued profit and reputation above all else, saw not just a lawsuit, but a potential market collapse. Investors were already getting nervous. The client who had missed the reporting deadline had escalated their concerns, threatening to pull their multi-million-dollar contract. The carefully curated image of innovation and competence the company projected was dissolving into a smear of IP theft and managerial incompetence. Victor, stripped of his bravest front, was a picture of abject terror. The HR director, her plastic smile long gone, looked like she was about to faint. The CEO, a man who usually exuded an air of flappable authority, was visibly sweating. The undeniable evidence, compiled and presented with surgical precision by Ryan, had cornered them. The inevitable call came to Ryan's personal phone, not from Victor, whose arrogance had evaporated, but from the CEO himself. His voice, usually booming with self-importance, was now strained, a desperate plea disguised as a business inquiry. "Ryan," he began, his tone a stark contrast to their last interaction. We need to discuss the situation. It's complicated." Ryan listened calmly, a faint smile playing on his lips as he sipped his meticulously brewed coffee. He had been anticipating this. He hadn't deleted anything, hadn't forgotten a single detail. His personal digital diary wasn't just a record. It was a leverage generator. "Complicated is one word for it," Ryan replied, his voice measured and steady. "Perhaps predictable is another." The CEO stammered, "Look, Ryan, we've reviewed the documentation. It's clear you played a significant role. We want to make this right. We want to bring you back." Ryan leaned back in his chair, a satisfied sigh escaping his lips. "Bring me back?" Interesting choice of words. It wasn't me who left. Of course, the CEO conceded quickly, his desperation palpable. We made a mistake, a significant one. The board is very concerned. We're willing to offer you significant compensation, a substantial bonus, reinstatement with full credit for your work, and a new role, a leadership position. This was the moment. Ryan had meticulously planned this endgame, not for emotional retribution, but for a definitive strategic victory. He let the CEO flounder for a few more moments, the silence on the line amplifying the man's desperation. "CEO," Ryan finally said, his voice firm but polite, "I appreciate the offer, but making things right is a bit more complex than the bonus and the promotion after you stole my intellectual property and fired me for being a cultural misfit." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I have two proposals. You can choose which one you prefer to present to your board." The CEO's breath hitched. "Proposals? What are they?" "Option A," Ryan began, his tone unwavering, "is straightforward. You offer me a new contract, full credit for the database, public acknowledgement of my sole authorship in all future company communications, a guaranteed position as head of data architecture with complete autonomy, and a salary that reflects not just my current value, but the value of the IP you wrongfully appropriated. This includes a significant signing bonus reflecting the damages incurred from my wrongful termination. Victor, of course, will be immediately and permanently removed from his position, with his departure framed as a consequence of gross mismanagement and ethical failure." He continued, "Option B," his voice dropping slightly, "is the nuclear option. If you choose not to accept option A, I will proceed with a formal lawsuit. This will involve not only the stolen IP and wrongful termination, but also claims of fraud, misrepresentation, and defamation. My documentation is extensive. I have already provided it to my legal counsel, who is standing by. This will lead to extensive public scrutiny, regulatory investigations, significant financial penalties for the company, and a complete implosion of your stock value. Furthermore, my legal team will ensure that the case is tried in the public eye, ensuring your company's name becomes synonymous with corporate thievery." The silence on the other end of the line stretched, taut with unspoken fear. The CEO knew with chilling certainty that Ryan was not bluffing. The evidence he had gathered was a digital guillotine poised to fall. "Ryan," the CEO choked out, his voice barely a whisper, We need to consider this. The board, they'll need to deliberate. Deliberate quickly," Ryan advised. "My lawyers are already drafting the necessary filings. Time is not on your side. You have 24 hours to provide a written acceptance of option A. If I don't receive it by then, option B becomes the only path forward." He hung up the phone, the quiet hum of his apartment, a stark contrast to the chaos he had just unleashed. He felt no triumph, no gleeful schadenfreude, just a profound sense of closure. He had built something revolutionary, and when they tried to steal it and discard him, he had, with quiet precision, taken it all back. 23 hours later, a formal, legally binding contract arrived in Ryan's inbox. It detailed his new role as head of data architecture, complete with a salary that would make Victor's annual earnings look like pocket change. It guaranteed him sole credit for the database in all future marketing materials and investor reports. It stipulated Victor's immediate termination, followed by an official statement from the company acknowledging his failure to uphold ethical standards and uphold his leadership responsibilities. The terms were precise, unyielding, and entirely Ryan's. Victor was escorted from the building by security that very afternoon, his face a mask of disbelief and humiliation. The HR director resigned abruptly, citing personal reasons, though rumors of a severance package tied to her silence were rampant. The company, battered but not broken, began the arduous process of rebuilding its reputation, now forever marked by the scandal. Ryan, meanwhile, was back in his home office, the quiet hum of his computers a familiar comfort. He had proven that competence, backed by meticulous documentation and unwavering resolve, could silence even the most brazen corporate corruption. He hadn't sought revenge for revenge's sake. He had sought justice, and he had achieved it, not with a shout, but with a carefully constructed, irrefutable argument. He opened his personal diary, the digital archive that had served as his weapon. He created a new entry, a final testament to his journey. He detailed the vindication, the newfound respect, and the understanding that true power wasn't about loudness, but about knowing the truth and having the proof to back it up. If watching corporate hubris meet its inevitable, well-documented end makes you feel a surge of satisfaction, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. Because the world always needs more stories of quiet competence triumphing over loud corruption. They tried to silence the architect. They only succeeded in making sure his blueprints were heard, and that, in the end, was all the demolition they deserved.